Good morning, everybody. I call to order this TNRD Parks and Trails Strategic Plan Development Standing Committee meeting. I'd like to first acknowledge that the TNRD connects with many First Nation communities across our vast regional districts, and today we are located on the Tecumloops the Secwepemc territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwepemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with Tecumloops the Secwepemc and respect the territory and land on which we gather today. Do we have any additions to or deletions from the agenda? Okay, seeing none, moving on to minutes. Can I get a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes of the May 14th, 2025 meet? Thank you. Moved by Director Thorpe and seconded by Director Houghton. Thank you. And moving on to Section 5 reports, I hand it over to Mr. Vieira. All in favor of adopting the minutes? All in favor, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So just a quick recap on our process here. So the intent now is in front of you as part of this agenda package is what we're calling the final draft of the report. So this is kind of the final opportunity to make any kind of last minute changes or tweaks to the report, and then it will be going to the board for adoption, assuming this committee recommends that. So there'll be a presentation here by our consultant, Lees and Associates. So Lee, Campbell, and Megan are online to present the kind of the final draft. And I'll pass it over to them. Take it away. I think Lee is leading the conversation.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I appreciate that. I will just share my screen here. Okay, and hopefully you're seeing that without any further complications. So I'm Lee Campbell with Lees and Associates, and as Jamie mentioned, I'm joined by Megan. And so this is our 5th meeting with the Standing Committee for this project. And today I'll provide a recap of where we are in the project, a brief summary of the engagement, and then we'll present the proposed vision and goals and recommendations within the proposed implementation plan. And then I'll turn it back to the chair for any discussion or questions that might arise. So the strategic plan is intended to outline the future direction, policies, and actions for TNRD regional and community parks over the next 10 years. And throughout the project, we've assessed the current state of parks and trails, looked at determining needs and values through comprehensive engagement, established a vision and goals, and have a series of recommendations for supporting service delivery along with an implementation plan. So the project began about a year ago, and the first 2 phases included some inventory and analysis, as well as a first round of engagement. And using the information gathered from those 2 phases, we prepared a draft strategic plan that we then took back out to the public and to other stakeholders for review and input. And we're now in the final phase, the final draft strategic plan. So as I noted, we've held 2 rounds of engagement throughout the project. The first round was really focused on information tell us what we need to know. And then during the second round, we shared the draft strategic plan and essentially asked, did we get it right? Is there anything that we're missing? We reached out to over 50 community groups, including outdoor rec organizations, tourism, environmental groups, industry representatives. We also engaged with municipal and electoral area representatives and staff, school districts, and staff from provincial ministries, including Rec Sites and Trails BC and the Ministry of Transportation and Transit. And in the second round, we also reached out to over 150 local businesses with ties to outdoor rec and tourism. And throughout both these rounds, we held meetings and workshops with these groups and agencies, as well as hosted 2 online public surveys. The opportunities for input were advertised on the TNRD's website and through their social media channels, as well as news releases and direct emails to stakeholders. TNRD staff also extended invitations over both engagement periods to 25 First Nations and had several meetings. And the project team will continue to look for opportunities to hear Indigenous perspectives and keep the invitation open for future parks and trails initiatives as things arise. So in terms of what we heard through engagement, participants, and I think we've mentioned this at the last meeting, they really highly valued access to nature and natural areas and appreciated amenities that supported passive recreation, such as trails and water access and other open areas. And they care deeply about wildlife and their local ecosystems and want to see them protected. So key opportunities that we looked at addressing through the plan, including creating equitable access for residents across the TNRD, helping support organizations that build and maintain parks and trails and other supporting amenities within the district, making those parks and trails easier to navigate and more enjoyable for users of all ages and abilities, and preparing parks and trails for impacts of climate change or other changing weather patterns, hotter weather, shorter winters, wildfires, or flooding as examples, and really highlighting the value that TNRD parks and trails can bring to supporting tourism in the region. Oops, going too fast here. So from our last meeting in May, we have now revised the report to include feedback from engagement, including some with the staff meetings that the staff held with First Nations. We've added to the plan itself an executive summary, as well as a proposed implementation plan. And so I'm just going to move on to the vision goals and recommendations now. And so the vision was really developed from all the information gathered from the previous phases, including strategic alignment, our understanding of the current system, and public engagement. And so the vision outlined in the plan is that the Park Service will foster First Nations reconciliation through relationships and partnerships that promote Indigenous culture and values, grow and manage the regional and community parks and trails system sustainably through partnerships and collaboration to better serve residents and to promote tourism, create opportunities for people to recreate, appreciate, and steward natural areas while ensuring protection and enhancement of the regional district's diverse ecosystems and wildlife, and supporting community connections, health and well-being, and equitable access to a variety of landscapes and outdoor rec opportunities across the region. So the vision is supported by 6 goals in 3 key areas. The first is within partnerships and collaboration. This is fostering government-to-government relationships with First Nations, supporting local outdoor rec organizations that build, manage, and maintain parks, trails, and supporting amenities in the region, and improving collaboration with nonprofits, industry, and other levels of government. Under management and operations, establishing management and maintenance tools to ensure the long-term sustainability of TNRD parks and trails. And under park and trail improvements, enhancing park experiences for all visitors and increasing the supply of TNRD parks and trails. So the recommendations will be presented in the table format that we've included in the implementation plan in the full report. So on the slides, you'll see there's just the title of each recommendation, and additional information is located within the body of the report itself. And within these tables, we show proposed level of priority, suggested timeline for activities, so short term of under 5 years, medium term of 5 to 10 years, and a long term of 10 plus years, and as well as ongoing. And resource requirements we've outlined in a series of buckets from $1 sign to $3 signs, kind of from $50,000 and below, $50,000 to $100,000, and then $100,000 and over. And we've also included information on potential partners or collaborators. And I just want to note that the endorsement of this as a strategic plan is really just a preliminary agreement, but it's not a commitment to spend. If endorsed, these operational tasks would be incorporated into staff work plans and departmental resources, and capital budgets would be assessed and integrated in the larger TNRD capital budget planning, and would be subject to board approval and based on available resources and balanced with other priorities across the district. So we'll just get started on the recommendations under Goal 1. So recommendations under this goal reflect the board's prioritization of reconciliation with First Nations. One is establishing a clear policy and processes for including First Nations and park and trail planning processes. So this could be including inviting or encouraging First Nations representation through park and trail initiatives, and making sure to include First Nations access or visibility of cultural history within any park and trail management planning. Recommendation 2 is to engage with Indigenous communities on opportunities to incorporate informational and interpretive signage that reflects territories, cultural values, things like historical trails or culture camps within the region, and these would be pursued in collaboration and also with the support of First Nations. And number 3 is to partner with Indigenous groups to ensure the preservation of culturally modified or significant trees, archaeological areas, and other culturally or ecologically significant resources within existing or potential future TNRD parks and trails. So this could include, ceremonial spaces or important food harvesting places. And actions that can help protect these areas might include making sure that trail alignments avoid impacts or don't encourage visitor intrusion. And recommendation 4 is that through the spirit of decolonization and collaboration, being open to considering the renaming of TNRD parks and trails where Indigenous languages and place names can be represented. So this can help recognize territories and increase awareness of Indigenous values and presence. And the first step would really be consulting with First Nations to see if there are any parks and trails under TNRD jurisdiction that were potential candidates, and then, working with them on updated signage or maps or other tourism information. One of the things we heard through engagement was that some community organizations are really struggling to maintain existing parks and trails that they look after, with sometimes limited funding and perhaps dwindling volunteer bases. So this goal and the recommendations under here are really about helping to support those organizations. So the first is to standardize agreements with these organizations to help ensure clear roles and responsibilities, to help with any authorization processes or liability concerns. Recommendation 6 is about exploring mechanisms to provide funding to community organizations. So this could feature funding streams that target trail maintenance, construction, and planning. And they might include, considerations might include things like organizational experience and capacity to undertake the project, the recreation and tourism value of the proposed initiative, support of local First Nations, and alignment with TNRD priorities, such as gaps in service, accessibility, or any active transportation needs. And the last one under this goal is to assist community organizations that build and maintain parks and trails with TNRD staff support. So where feasible, the TNRD could support with in-kind contributions such as GIS mapping or assistance with permitting, materials or equipment. This recommendation also includes considering the establishment of a resource library to assist outdoor rec organizations, in a sort of may help reduce the administrative load for those organizations so they can focus on delivering parks and trails themselves. So recommendations under Goal 3 are aimed at improving collaboration between volunteer groups, resource industries, and other levels of government. The first one is to establish sub-regional trail working groups to increase coordination, collaboration, and efficient use of resources. So user groups seeking to start new projects must engage with First Nations, multiple levels of government, other tenure holders, and industry, and it can be challenging to develop and maintain those relationships. And on the flip side, governments and industries can also find it challenging to communicate or consult with recreational groups. So the working groups would provide a way to facilitate that process and could include regular forums to discuss issues and opportunities. So an example of this is the existing Blue River Trails Working Group. And the second recommendation under this goal is to work with other organizations to improve parkland supply and access. And this recommendation is about partnerships that could enhance the TNRD's ability to acquire and manage additional parks. And there's also an opportunity to adopt parkland in areas where community groups that currently own and manage trails may need support due to overloaded or retiring volunteers. So the TNRD could adopt such parkland, particularly if it meets the criteria outlined for potential acquisition. So the recommendations under Goal 4 are focused on internal systems and tools to help the TNRD manage, maintain, and ensure the long-term sustainability of parks and trails. So the first one is to adopt an adaptive management approach, which is really just about continuing to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of the park service and updating plans or policies to address any changing conditions that might arise. Number 11 there is to develop an asset management system, which would assist in monitoring, maintaining, and developing the system and would help contribute to higher levels of service and perhaps some operational efficiencies as well. Number 12, create park development and management plans for existing future parks and trails. And these plans would help provide a roadmap of decision-making for specific sites and provide direction on the appropriate types, locations, and thresholds of users and activities. And development of these plans would include consultation with First Nations to understand, cultural importance and values, along with public engagement to really understand broader community values. Establish a level of service for regional parks and trails. So this would include the types of amenities and the type and frequency of inspections and maintenance that can be expected at different parks and trails. And this, should be aligned with TNRD resources and can be used to inform planning and design of parks and trails. And they provide guidance on, things like parking or signage, waste collection, washrooms, to help ensure that parks and trails are safe and adequately maintained. Number 14, establish a trail classification system. So this would build on existing classification systems, such as Blue River Trails Network or those developed by Recreation Sites and Trails BC. And it would be more of a planning tool rather than an outward facing system. Update park policies to ensure parks are correctly classified as either community or regional parks. Because these two are funded differently and have different levels of service, the distinction between the two is not always clear cut as there's overlapping characteristics. But generally, as we've outlined in the report, regional parks provide regionally significant recreational, ecological, and cultural amenities that would attract visitors across the TNRD and would be funded from taxes from all electoral areas and municipalities. And community parks, in comparison, provide recreational opportunities that are really more tailored to the needs and interests of specific neighborhood residents. And these are funded primarily through taxes from residents of electoral areas. And when a community park offers a regional draw, it might, enable improved park amenities or opportunities if the funding was extended to the region and it was designated as a regional park. One example that came up in development of the plan was Agate Boat Launch, which draws visitors from multiple communities and could be a good candidate for designation as a regional park. And the last one under this goal is to establish a park use policy and explore opportunities for park-related revenue streams. So this is, these events that already happen in TNRD parks, such as wedding ceremonies or community festivals. The current parks regulation bylaw does provide some high-level regulations for the issuance of permits, but it doesn't really outline specific event requirements. And so this park use policy could help specify what needs to be considered in the event plan, types of allowable activities, the event size, any booking terms. And you could also look at fees for events or other user fees through the parks regulation bylaw or a fee bylaw to help offset the cost of providing parks and trails or some level of cost recovery. These could include special event fees, user fees for things like camping or facility rentals. Moving on to goal 5, these recommendations include ways to enhance universal accessibility or to better communicate accessibility considerations. So the first is to identify opportunities for upgrading parks and trails and supporting amenities for universal accessibility standards. So this could be surfacing or parking, washrooms, picnic areas, and these should be prioritized in parks and trails where they'll have the largest impact, such as community parks or areas that accommodate passive recreation. Publishing accessibility information on parks and trails. This could be on the TNRD's website as well as on park information kiosks and signage. Implementing a consistent signage and wayfinding system. This could provide information about amenities, route options, trail etiquette, who yields to who, as well as applicable bylaws. And it's just a way to help ensure that the parks and trails are used safely and appropriately. And lastly, goal 6. These goals are about growing the supply of TNRD parks and trails. So the first is to look to develop new regional parks. And these should strive to create a broad range of benefits to residents through outdoor experiences that draw visitors from across the region and help bring tourism and economic development opportunities. New community parks or developing new community parks in priority areas. This is about, sort of equitable distribution, making sure that they have access to public places to play and gather. So we've discussed prioritizing community parks in electoral areas with few or no existing parks. For example, electoral areas E, I, J, N, and P have no community parks currently. Exploring opportunities for new trail networks in priority areas and regional trail connections. So regional trails like Okanagan's Kettle Valley Rail Trail has really great rec and tourism value and can help meet active transportation goals, but development is often complex and multi-jurisdictional, so can be challenging. And we've also indicated that trail development within the TNRD's parks and trails could help with that equitable distribution. So electoral areas I, L, and P are currently both poorly served by TNRD parks as well as Sites and Trails BC trails. And the last recommendation is to review underdeveloped and underutilized TNRD parkland and consider recommendations for the disposition of parkland that is not suitable for development. And the TNRD may have received unsuitable parkland before it had policies in place with the adoption of the 2005 Parks Plan policy. So there are several undeveloped sites that may not be suitable or feasible for development as parks. So we've suggested reviewing these undeveloped subdivision parks against the parkland acquisition criteria outlined in the report for suitability and feasibility. And then just to note that provincial legislation does govern the disposal of parkland. So any proceeds would be placed into the existing reserve for acquisition of new parkland. So that is my review of the draft plan, and I'll turn it back to the chair for any discussion or questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Campbell and Ms. Turnock, for your presentation and all the work you've done for this committee. Do we have any questions or comments from our committee members? Director Morris.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Just a bit of a quick comment that I kind of heard. I wouldn't mind just a little more exploration on where you have say regional park area where there might be an opportunity for commercial activities. I'm curious where the strategy aligns or doesn't with that. So for example, weddings that take place in outdoor venues, and Riverside Park is a great example of a number of them that occur, but we've got some really unique locations. We've commented about Agate Bay and whatnot as well. Where would the strategy lie around those types of outdoor commercial activities that involve a fee, or there's clearly a business model behind gauge or staging these weddings? So just a question in terms of balance of what we want within the park systems.
For sure. And I think that I can, sorry, Jamie, I'm not sure if you want me to answer. I was going to say the park use policy recommendation, I think, would really help guide that. It would outline, where might be the best place for those events, what might be required from anybody delivering it, and could also outline any fees for service.
Yeah, and if I may, Chair, I just echo that. I was going to say basically the same thing, that is addressed under that, I guess it's number 16, around having that park use policy. So I think it's a very good comment from Director Morris that that policy can even go down to the granular level of deciding, okay, in which parks would we allow certain activities? Because right now we don't have that level of detail. So if someone says, I want to hold a wedding in Birch Island Park, we don't have any guidance of yes, you can, or no, you can't. Staff are kind of dealing with those as one-off, but having a board endorsed policy around that would help for guidance. And then same with related to that is the revenue stream. So if it's something, let's say it's a for-profit concert that wants to be hosted in one of our parks, what's our regulation around that? So we've done some work on that already in our parks use bylaw, but this recommendation is to have that in a little more detail. Anything to add to that, Sherry?
Ms. Jeremiah?
Thank you, Chair. Just before we proceed, as we do have some non-appointed members in the room, I'm just hoping that we could do a blanket resolution to provide approval for contributions and et cetera during the meeting.
Sorry, so do we need a mover and a seconder for that?
We do. I can, if you want, I can read something out.
Sure, yeah, thank you.
Okay, so that the Parks and Trails Strategic Plan Development Standing Committee allow non-appointed board members to participate in the discussion and debate on items identified on the June 26, 2025 committee agenda.
Okay, moved by Director Smith and seconded by Director Thorpe. Okay, thank you, Mr. Hildebrand. All in favor? Minor. Moved, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vieira and Director Morris. Are there any further questions from the committee? Director Onslow?
Thank you very much. I have just a couple of questions. So TNRD Area B, we have our Parks and Trails strategy, and we have a standing committee. We have lots of great momentum moving forward with initiatives that are already in play. And I get a little bit concerned about the wording in this policy for areas that are underserved. And I just want to clarify that if other areas are getting parks established, is that taking anything away from what momentum we already have going in Area B?
Yeah, good question through the chair. I would say no, it shouldn't take any momentum because using Blue River as an example, the work that's been done in Blue River is ahead of where we are regionally through this strategy. Blue River already has a strategy and a master plan for the trails. So we already have board direction to implement that master plan. Now we need just, funding and to implement it. So I would say no, it's not going to detract from that direction that's already in place. But
Supplemental to that, another question for the town of Evola, and I know that there's residents there that are curious about access to water, and I don't know how that looks and how that works for motorized access. But if that were to be an establishment of a park, say down the road and in the future, in hypothetically 5 years, would the policy as it's worded right now not allow the investment into that community for a boat launch?
through the chair, you're suggesting you mean it being a community park and not prioritized because they're already served in that area? Is that what you mean?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
No, it wouldn't make that impossible. I think the intent of the strategy is to recognize that some areas are better served than others. But I guess I would say, like, as from a staff perspective, it gets brought up by the board as something to investigate. We're going to look at it within the community. I mean, we may have, like, our electoral area boundaries are somewhat arbitrary as well. So you might have somewhere right on the boundary of a park or on a boundary of an electoral area that might be served or underserved depending on where they are in the boundary. I don't know how best to answer that question. I mean, the answer is no, it's not going to stop us from being able to develop it. But in terms of prioritization of areas where we're going to put in effort, the strategy says that we're going to focus on underserved areas. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Onslow. Actually, that's kind of segues to some of the points I wanted to talk about. So before this meeting, and I copied in our committee members, there was a number of questions I had about the reports. And one of them, I'll move on to actually midway through there. Director Onslow and I had talked about water access, and reading the recommendations. It actually focused majority, actually all of it, on non-motorized access. So I had discussed that with Mr. Vieira, whether or not we can change some of the wordings in the recommendation reports so that when it goes to the board, this motorized access remains, on our radar. So as Mr. Vieira suggested, if it would be up to this committee, if we all support that. Mr. Vieira, would you recommend I make a motion to have this added to the report under recommendation 20 and 21 to specify motorized access?
I don't feel like we need a recommendation from this committee. I mean, if there's consensus, this committee, I mean, I agree that's something that we've heard that should be more clear in this strategy, that both motorized and non-motorized. Using the Agate Bay boat launch as an example, I mean, that's primarily motorized boat access, and we're identifying that as a high-use park in this strategy. So I don't think we need the committee direction. I think the committee could discuss that now, and we could take that under advisement and make those kind of language modifications in the final draft that goes to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Vieira. Is there anybody against implementing motorized access in our parks in this committee? Nope, seeing none. Okay. Just sharing, some of the discussions that I had on email. Like, again, reading the report, that prioritization of underserved area, but also there was another section, recommendation of focusing on the 5 existing parks, where 4 out of the 5 are in area OA and B. So I had, shared concern about that, and Mr. Vieira shared that there will, obviously be a balance, and the improvements on existing parks will obviously take place much faster and easier than the implementation of creation of new parks in the underserved areas. So, and then the other topic is, just the recommendation to add the topic of linear trails to the regional subcommittees for them to discuss, as there would be a perfect opportunity for, multiple cross-region-wide stakeholders to meet together. And then also, and under the next agenda item, should the committee recommend and the board ratifies the membership in the Outdoor Recreational Council of BC, I suggested adding that to the list of the stakeholders and partners and collaborators. And lastly, yes, addressing some of the comments from Director Hall in the past about looking after grants and such, that definitely will be part of the operational aspect of this strategy. So, okay, sorry, let me open up the agenda again. So we do have a recommendation for this section of the agenda. That's the Parks and Trails Strategic Plan Development Standing Committee recommend to the Board of Directors that the final draft of the Parks and Trails Strategic Plan, June 2025, be adopted and implemented. Can I have a mover and seconder for that recommendation? Moved by Director Hall and seconded by Director Onslow. All in favor? Okay, so moved. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item, Outdoor Recreation Council of BC. So I think a few of us have sat through some of their virtual webinars provided by the Outdoor Recreational Council, and they've been tremendous free resources for us. Oh, hasn't Ms. Campbell? Are they still with us, or can we proceed? Okay, cool. Okay. And they've been good resources. So I just wanted to bring to the committee the suggestion that we add the recommendation to the board that we do, the TNRD applies for an annual membership with the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC. So I'll open up to this. Oh, sorry. I need a mover and a seconder and then discussion. Moved by Director Thorpe, seconded by Director Onslow. Any discussion about the topic? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, carried or moved. Okay, section 6, next steps. I'll turn it over to Mr. Vieira.
All right, so excellent. Congratulations, Standing Committee. You got a plan completed and recommended to the board. So we will make those small modifications as discussed here and over email. And then we'll be bringing this to the board along with your recommendation for them to adopt it. I know there'll be, this is the first step of many. Now that we have a strategy in place, now comes the real work of actually figuring out how to implement it. But I was chatting with some of the directors casually here before the meeting. This is the required process, and it's important. We need to know where you're going before you start the journey. So now we kind of know where we're going and where we want to get. The details of how long it's going to take and where the money's going to come from and what's going to be done first. That's all the work to be done. But I'm excited about this. I'm really excited about this moving forward. So I'll put it back to the chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Vieira. And yeah, no, thank you everybody in the committee for all the time you've put in and suggestions. If there's no more questions, can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved by, oh, sorry, Mr. Vieira.
I just had one more thing that I forgot to say. I wanted to just acknowledge Sherry Madden, how much work she's done on this file. I've been the one talking here today. She's been the one doing all the work, as well as our whole consulting team with Lees and Associates have done a great job through this whole process. Yeah, between Sherry and them, there's been a lot of emails, a lot of discussion back and forth to get us to where we are today. So thank you, Sherry.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn by Director Thorpe.